So far we've been discussing the stock market and how it operates, how you go about buying and selling a batch of shares. We need now to focus our attention on that very important newspaper price page that gives us all the information about what prices are being paid or being offered for shares and at what prices shares are being sold. And we need to understand a little bit more about the structure of that. So what you would want to do is to get hold of your daily newspaper, and you will notice that if you turn to the prices page of that newspaper, that the South African stock market comprises many hundreds of shares, but they're divided into certain categories. Now, the whole market is divided into three broad categories, the first of which are the mining shares. And you'll notice that underneath the heading mining, that there are different subsectors that fall within that category. For example, you may find diamonds as one sector, and all the shares that are involved in diamond trade or diamond extraction will be listed in that sector. Then there are gold shares that are listed by category, by region. Platinum shares are listed as well. Copper, tin, silver, etc. All the mining shares are listed in that segment of the market, and we would call that the mining sector. The second sector or division in the market is what is known as the financial sector. And the financial sector comprises shares such as banks, insurance companies, property trusts, and you'll see there are a whole variety of different subsectors underneath that heading of the financial sector. The last sector in the market, which is the biggest, is called the industrial sector. And this comprises more shares than any of the other sectors. And the industrial sector is really any other companies that engage in any other business activities, and they are listed under different headings. For example, there's the electronics subsector, there's beverages and hotels. There's an engineering subsector, stores, transport, media, etc., etc. So there are various different subsectors grouping those shares so that if you, for example, want to buy a share in a company that is in the electronics sector, you will understand that the main thrust of their business activity is within that market, within that environment. So the categorization is there to help you to fit shares into whichever area of the economy they belong. Now, these three sectors together are referred to as being the main board. That's the most prominent section where shares are displayed. These are companies that have got a substantial track record, they have proven to be good performers in the past, and the Johannesburg Stock Exchange is happy to present them to you as possible options for investment. We also need to understand the concept of what is called an index. You see, it's very important that the stock market can convey to us whether prices are generally rising or generally falling within certain sectors or even subsectors. And in order to tell or communicate with us the extent to which shares are going up or down, they make use of what is called an index. Now, if you turn on your television in the evening, you'll generally find that there's a section devoted to the business report. And in that business report, they might quote what is known as the Jse Overall Index. The Jse Overall Index refers to all the shares on the stock market clumped together. And if on your television set you are told that the market is currently at 7,000 index points, for example, and today has risen by 20 index points, then you will understand that overall, or generally speaking, share prices have gone up. In other words, the value of the stock market has risen by 20 index points. Now that in itself doesn't mean a lot, but if you take those 20 index points and you express them as a percentage of the 7,000 index points that the market is currently at, you will get an idea of what percentage rise or percentage fall the stock market has experienced. In this case, the market has risen by 20 out of 7,000, and that will be a very small percentage, maybe even 0.1 or 0.3%. it's not likely that the market will rise by large amounts on a daily basis. If there's really drastic news, for example, a political leader passes away, or there is an enormous crisis in a country, then you might find that the stock market can drop by 5, maybe even 6%. That would be considered an enormous drop. However, typically on a daily basis, the stock market will move up or down by less than 1%. And the index gives us some idea as to how much or what percentage the market has changed or moved. Once upon a time, the stock market worked on an index value of 100 points. That was back in 1970, and now has grown from those 100 points, which was the value of the market those days, has now grown to 7,000 index points. So you can appreciate the fact that over an extended period of many years, the stock market has the capacity to grow in value very, very significantly. In this regard, it is important that you understand the concept of what is known as market capitalization, because this is the basis upon which indexes are calculated. If I refer to the market capitalization, for example, of De Beers, I'm basically telling you what the value of that company is in the way it's rated by the stock market. So the market capitalization is simply the number of shares in issue, and we spoke about issued share capital earlier on, and we multiply the number of shares that are out there by the current market price. So if you were, for example, to open your newspaper up and look at De Beers, you would find, let's say that the current market price is 10 Rand. I'm just going to use 10 Rand to keep it simple. And if you were to find out that the number of shares in issue, let's say, was 5 million, then we would say that the market capitalization for De Beers is 5 million shares multiplied by 10 Rand current value per share. In other words, the market value would in this case be 50 million Rand. Now that would be the current worth or value of that company. Many other companies have got a market capitalization that is much lower than that. So for example, if another company, let's say for argument's sake, a company like Val Reefs, let's assume that their market capitalization is only 25 million Rand, then do you see that Val Reefs would contribute half towards that index as what De Beers does? Because De Beers is worth twice as much in terms of its existing value than what Val Reefs is, and therefore it should contribute twice as much to the calculation of that index. So that's why we say that that index is weighted according to the size of the various companies, and the size of those companies is determined according to what is known as their market capitalization. So that's the concept of an index, and it gives us an understanding of how the market performed yesterday. We can see the market went up by 20 points. We can convert that to a percentage and get some understanding of the overall performance of the market. But in addition to the overall index, you may also see on your television screen that there is JSE Gold Index, or the JSE Industrial Index, or the JSE Financial Index. In other words, we are also given information about various sectors within the market and how they've performed. So it's quite possible that although the overall index was plus 20 points, it's quite possible that not all sectors have risen. For example, the gold sector might have gone down by 15 points, for argument's sake. The industrial sector may have risen by 10 points. The financial sector may have risen by 2 points. And it doesn't mean to say that those should therefore all add up to plus 20, because remember, these index values are weighted according to their levels of importance. So it's quite possible that despite the market overall rising, that segments or sections within that market are falling, even though the overall market is rising and showing gains.